Fairest by Gail Carson Levine. Read by Rosemary Hungerford. Chapter 1. I was born singing. Most babies cry. I sing an aria. Or so I believe. I have no one to tell me the truth of it. I was abandoned when I was a month old, left at the Featherbed Inn in the Aorthean village of Amonta. It was January 12th of the year of thunder songs. The wench who brought me to the inn paid for our chamber in advance and smuggled me in unseen. The next morning she smuggled herself out, leaving me behind. I know what happened next. Father and Mother, the innkeeper and his wife, have retold the tale on the anniversary of my arrival since I grew old enough to understand the words. "You were left in the lark chamber," Mother would say. "It was the right room for you, my songbird."
"It was a chill morning," Father would chime in. "Soon you were howling."
His shoulders would shake with laughter.
"I thought you were Mealy."
We would all smile, my younger sister Arita, my two older brothers, Mother and I. Amelia was our cat, kitten then. Mother would burst in. "I knew straight off you were a babe. I knew you were a singer, too," she'd sing. "It was all in your lovely howl." We'd laugh at that. She'd shake her head. "No, truly, it was lovely." My favorite part would come next. Mother would throw back her head and imitate my howl, a high, pure note. Aortha is a kingdom of singers. In our family and in Amonta, my voice is the finest. Mother often said that if I tried, I could sing the sun down from the sky.
"I opened the chamber door," Father would say, continuing the tale, "and there you were."
I was in the center of the bed, crying and kicking the air. "I picked you up," Mother would say, "and you gurgled such a musical gurgle." My brother Alla would break in with his favorite part. "Your bottom was wet." Arita would giggle. Father and Mother would never mention that the blanket I had arrived in was velvet, edged with gold thread. The story would go on. Mother carried me into the sparrow room where my brother slept. Father headed for the attic to find Alla's old cradle. When he came down, I was lying on Alla's small bed, while Alla, who was 2 years old then, gently poked my cheek. No one has told me what happened next, but I know. I can imagine the sight I was. Yari, who was 5, would have spoken his mind as he does to this day. He would have said, in a tone of wonder, "She's so ugly." Then, they have told me this, he said, "Can we keep her, Father?" Father and Mother did, and named me Asa, which means lark in Aorthean. They treated me no differently from their own children, and taught me to read music and songs from our treasured leather songbook, kept on its own high table in the entry parlor. I was an unsightly child. My skin was the weak blue-white of skimmed milk, which wouldn't have been so bad if my hair had been blonde and my lips pale pink. But my lips were as red as a dragon's tongue, and my hair as black as an old frying pan. Mother always denied that I was ugly. She said that looking different wasn't the same as looking amiss, and she called me her one-of-a-kind girl. Still, she promised I'd grow prettier as I grew older. I remember asking her a dozen times a day if I was prettier yet. She would stop whatever she was doing, cleansing the guest chamber or bathing Rita, and consider me. Then she'd sing, "I think so." But soon after, one of the inn's guests would stare, and I know the transformation hadn't really taken place. If anything, I became uglier. I grew large-boned and awkward. My chubby cheeks were fine for a babe, but not for an older child. I resembled a snow maid with a big spear of a face and round button eyes. I ached to be pretty. I wished my fairy godmother would come and make me so. Mother said we all have fairy godmothers, but they rarely reveal themselves. I wished I could see mine. I was sure fairies were supremely beautiful and glorious in every way. Mother said fairy godmothers only watched from afar and sympathize. I didn't see the good of a hand-wringing fairy godmother. I needed one who'd fly in and help. With no hope for fairy intervention, I wished for a magic spell to make me pretty. At night, I'd sing nonsense words to myself after Arita had fallen asleep. I thought I might stumble on the right combination of syllables and notes, but I never did. I attempted to make myself more presentable by pinning my hair up this way or that, or by tying a ribbon around my neck. Once, I sneaked into Father's workshop and smeared wood stain on my face and arms. The results were streaky brown skin and a rash that lasted a month. The inn's guests were sometimes friendly, but more often they were rude. As bad as the ones who stared were the ones who looked away in embarrassment. Some guests didn't want me to serve their food, and some didn't want me to clean their rooms. We Aortheans are sensitive to beauty.
more sensitive than the subjects in other kingdoms, I think. We love a fine voice especially, but we also admire a rosy sunset, a sweet scent, a fetching face. And when we're not pleased, we're displeased. I developed the habit of holding my hand in front of my face when guests arrived, a foolish practice because it raised curiosity and concealed little. Mother and father mostly gave me chores that kept me out of sight, helping the laundress or washing dishes. They did so to protect me, but it was common sense, too. I was bad for business. Sometimes I wondered if they regretted taking me in, and sometimes I wished I'd been abandoned at a farmhouse. The chickens wouldn't have minded if an ugly maiden fed them. The cows wouldn't have minded if an ugly maiden cleaned their stalls. Or would they? Chapter 2. The only feather-bed guests who were comfortable with me were the gnomes. They never stared, never seemed even to notice my appearance. Gnomes upset the inn's routine. Etimi, our cook, had to prepare root vegetable stews for them, the only human food gnomes can eat. But father was glad to have them anyway. Gnomes, at least the ones who traveled, were wealthy. They tipped generously and paid in advance. Better yet, they often paid double, because husbands and wives took separate rooms since adult gnomes were too wide to share our beds. Mother always had me serve them and clean their rooms. One day I was polishing the chest of drawers in the crane chamber when its occupant returned. I was singing a cleaning song I'd made up and didn't hear him. He stood in the doorway as I sang. I'm not a serf, but a serf, and my enemy's worse than a knight ever cursed. My foes are the dirt, the dust, the filth and decay. I brandish my mop, my rag, and my scouring pad. My enemies flee, or they melt, or they die. But they have friends, and the friends have friends, who have more friends, and whatever I try, the dirt never ends. Slime and grime, sludge and smudge, mud and crud, oh gooey guck and gluey muck. I'm not a sir, I'm a serf, and my enemy's worse than a knight ever cursed. The gnome, whose name was Zom, said, Oh my! I turned, startled, and he was waving his hands in the air, applauding the Aorthean way. My blotchy blush began, but his arms didn't come down. I smiled at him. He smiled back, showing teeth that resembled iron posts. I like your song. It is charming, to be exact, and your voice is more than charming. Zom was a frequent guest at the inn, although we had never spoken to each other before. I thought of him as the Green Gentleman. Green because of the emerald buttons on all his tunics. Gentleman because he was polite and fussy, with a soft, breathy voice and small gestures. He had curly brown hair, small ears set close to his head, and skin almost as pale as my own. Shall I leave, Master Zom? I said. I can finish cleaning later. I hoped he'd say no. I had a question I'd long wished to ask a gnome if the opportunity arose. No need. I only want to think a moment. To be exact, I can do that as badly with you here as with you gone. He sat carefully on the bench by the fireplace. How nice he was. I worked slowly. I couldn't ask my question until he finished thinking. I was changing his pillowcase and deciding to scrub the washstand again when he stood up. There, he said. I am finished thinking, perhaps for the month. Was he jesting? I smiled uneasily, holding his pillow by a corner. He nodded, reading my expression. Yes, it is a jest. Not so humorous, to be exact. I gathered my courage and said in a rush, Can you see what is to come? Some gnomes could. Hints, glimmers, we never see more. I didn't know if a hint or a glimmer would be specific enough. Would you be so kind? Would it be too much trouble? There's something you would like to know. I blurted out. Will I ever be pretty? I hugged the pillow, protecting myself against his answer. Never. Oh. He must have seen my misery, because he added, All humans are ugly, to be exact. All humans? Yes. I was amazed. He went on, You are slightly less ugly than most. Your hair is a beautiful color. Hatun. I've never seen a human with hatun hair before. I wasn't listening. Will I ever be pretty to people? To humans? He stared over my left shoulder. I thought his expression changed, although his face was so leathery and seemed so lizard-like, I wasn't sure. A minute passed. Maid Eza, that is your name? I nodded. In Nomic, we would call you Maid Azak. He folded his hands across his chest, delivering a pronouncement. In the future, you and I will meet again. Even I could see far enough into the future to see that. He stayed at the featherbed once or twice every month. I smelled my home and saw glow iron. To be exact, we'll meet again in Gnome Caverns. You will be in danger. What sort of danger, and how would I get to Gnome Caverns? But I skipped to my main concern. Will I look as I do now? You will be smaller. Smaller would be a big improvement. Do your visions always come to pass? This will come to pass, unless you do something irregular at a crossroad. I didn't understand. There was one more change in you in my vision. Your hair was black, with little Hatan left. What's Hatan? Hatan looks black to humans. It is the color I like best. Deeper than scarlet, more serene than cerulean, gayer than yellow. Your Hatan hair is the most beautiful I've ever seen. I stared down at the floor, trying not to cry. No one had ever before said that anything about me looked beautiful. If only humans could see Hatan. In the year of barn songs, when I was 12, the Duchess of Elixo and her companion, Dame Ethelly, stopped at the featherbed for a night. Father and Mother were thrilled, but also worried. If the Duchess liked the inn, she could steer other rich customers to us. If she disliked it, she could get our license revoked by the king. I was thrilled and worried, too. Thrilled because I had never seen a duchess before, and worried because the Duchess had never seen me before. I'd stay out of the way, but if our paths crossed, would she hate the sight of me? I was serving dinner to a party of gnomes when she arrived, earlier than expected, or I would never have been in the tavern. Father conducted a small plump woman and a large one to the best table. The large woman, who was approximately my own size, had more ribbons and bows on her gown than I'd ever seen collected together. The small one was as richly clad, but more simply. Neither of them glanced my way. I wondered which was Duchess and which was companion. It would have been rude to stare, as I knew better than anyone. I stole glances, however, and soon decided who was who. The large one was Dame Ethelly, and the small, plump one was the Duchess. How did I know? Well, the small woman's expression was petulant, but the big woman smiled. The smiling one had to be the companion. After all, who would pay to have a petulant companion? I was perplexed by the Duchess's petulance. What did she have to be petulant about? She was a Duchess, and she didn't have a face that made dogs howl. The Duchess didn't like her dinner. Etemy had prepared her best dish, heart sautéed with spring onions and Iorthian fire peppers. Unfortunately, the Duchess detested peppers of every sort, and she expected everyone to know it. Mother apologized and brought out a double helping of chicken pot pie, but the damage was done. The Duchess's frown deepened. Before she left her table, she told Mother she wanted a mug of hot Stumo delivered to her chamber at 9 that night. "Not a second before 9, she said in a voice that carried, "nor yet a second after, but on the stroke itself, or I shall send it back. And it must be piping hot, piping, or I shall send it back." After I finished waiting on the gnomes, I was sent to the stable to help another gnome find a belt buckle in one of his trunks. It was a prolonged business. The buckle, naturally, was in the third and final trunk. I returned to the kitchen while Etemy was preparing the ostumo, a mixture of grain and molasses that was Eortha's favorite beverage. She was so flustered by the Duchess that she scalded the first pot and had to throw it out. By 5 before 9, the second pot was ready. Mother poured it into a mug and placed the mug on the tray. A crash and a loud oath came from the tavern. Mother turned towards the tavern door. "I'd better—" She stopped and turned back to the piping hot mug. She looked appealingly at Etemy. "Not me, Mr. Zingy. I won't bring anything to that Duchess, and I'm no tavern wench." I wished I was still in the stable. I couldn't settle a tavern brawl, and the Duchess wouldn't want to see my face looming over her stumo. We heard another crash and more swearing. There was no time to get Father or my brothers. "Asa!" Mother wet her finger and wiped a smudge off my cheek. She tucked a stray strand of hair into my bonnet. "Take the Astumo to the Duchess and come—" "I can't. I've no one else. Come right back and tell me what she says." She put the tray with the no longer piping hot Astumo into my hands. The clock began to strike 9. "Hurry!" Mother snatched up the broom and dustpan and marched into the tavern. I left the kitchen and started up the stairs, although I wanted to hide in the cellar. It will be over in a moment, I told myself, and answered myself. Yes, the Duchess will toss the Astumo in my face, then she'll call for her carriage and leave. Emily was snoozing on the stairway landing. I scooped him up. I could hold him high so the Duchess would see less of me. She was in her best room, the peacock chamber. I knocked on the door. The Duchess opened her door. "You're late. Take it away. Then she saw Emily. I don't think she noticed me. "Oh, the sweetie!" She took him. "Aren't you a sweetie?" She gestured at the sumo. "Put it next to the bed. I have sweeties at home. Would you like me to tell you their names?" She was talking to Emily, but I nodded. She no longer looked petulant. I followed her into the room. "I have 10 sweet cats. Their names are Asha, Eshe, Ishi, Oshu, Ushu, Yishi, Alka, Elke." The Duchess didn't seem to have much imagination. I said the next 2 names in my mind as she spoke them. "Ilki and Ulko. Then there are my sweet kittens." She sat on her bed. Emily leaned against her chest and purred. I put the sumo on the night table and backed away. "I've named only 2 kittens thus far." She looked at me. I raised my hand in front of my face. She went on. "Do you have any suggestions for the rest? Sit down. There are 7 in the litter." I sat on the stool by the washstand. "Not there. There." She nodded at the chair by the fireplace, where I wouldn't have dared to sit. I took it. "Perhaps you could name them Anya, Enye, Ini, Onyo, and Unyo." "Those are possible. What's this sweetie called?" "Emily, your grace." "Ah, then I will name the rest. Amma, Leah, and Emily, and so on." She tasted her sumo. I held my breath. Her complaining tone was back. "It isn't hot. Moreover, it's weak. The kitchen will have to do better when I come again. Would you like me to tell you which is my favorite, sweetie?" "She would come again." I nodded. The Duchess told me which was her second favorite and her third. 2 hours later, wild with worry and curiosity, Mother opened the Duchess's door a crack. There was the Duchess snoring in her bed, Emily curled up in the crook of her arm, and there I was, sleeping in the Duchess's chair. The Duchess became a regular guest at the inn. She remained fractious and difficult to please, but she adored Emily and tolerated me. In the year of forest songs, when I was 14, I discovered a new way to sing. I was cleaning the falcon chamber, which had been occupied by a Carian merchant, Sir Peter of Frel. After I dusted the mantelpiece, I went to the washstand. The basin was there, but not the pitcher. As I sang, "Where is the pitcher?" I began to hiccup. I sang, "Did Sir Peter steal the pitcher?" I knew the tricks of less than honorable guests. "But," I sang, "it's very large for stealing." I opened the top drawer of the bureau. Empty. "Then where is the—" I hiccuped. My next word, "pitcher," seemed to come from the center of the canopy over the 4-poster bed. The hiccup had flung the word across the room. How odd. I opened the middle bureau drawer. Empty. I opened the bottom drawer. Aha! Shards of pitcher. "Sir Peter hid his crime." An honorable guest would have confessed to breaking the pitcher and would have paid for the damage. "Sir Peter is a—" I hiccuped it up again. "Scoundrel!" seemed to issue from the flower pot on the windowsill. I stopped cleaning and began a love song that was on everyone's lips lately. "From your roses I won just a—" Oh! I tried to fling thorn from my throat the way the hiccup had flung scoundrel, but it wouldn't go. I sounded half strangled instead. I tried again and failed again. I went on with the song. "In your white eyes I've seen only scorn. From your heart song I've heard but a—" I hiccuped. "Sigh," emanated from the corner by the door. I stayed in the falcon chamber, not cleaning. I couldn't stop trying to fling my voice. My hiccups passed, but I kept trying, and failing. Mother found me there and scolded me soundly. I didn't tell her what I'd been doing, because it would have sounded ridiculous. I said I'd been wool gathering and returned to work. But from then on, whenever I had a minute of solitude, I tried again. I knew my stomach had done most of the work, so I pulled it in hard, trying to get enough thrust. For my pains, I gave myself a sore abdomen. Still, I kept at it, and sometimes I thought, almost. Then, after a month, I had my first success. I was cleaning the dove chamber, and I made the word apple sound as if it was coming from the floor 2 feet from my feet. Apples were the fruit I liked least, but they were delicious to sing and delicious to fling. I tried again and failed, but on the next attempt, apple rang from the windowsill. After that, I made swift progress. Soon I could send my voice wherever I wanted, within reason. I couldn't send it a mile away. My next endeavor was to learn to fling my voice without moving my lips. This required weeks of practice, touching my face to make sure it was motionless. I might have progressed faster if I'd looked in a mirror, but I never looked in mirrors. I named the new skill Illuzing. I was a good mimic, so I added mimicry. Alone in the stable, I learned to illuse Father's voice, speech or singing, and make it come from the hayloft. I could conjure Mother's voice answering from the stall outside, and I could call forth a whinny from an empty stall. I could even duplicate the creak of a stable door when it was opened. My first demonstration was to Arita, though I hadn't planned it that way. She and I shared the hummingbird chamber. Her bedtime was 10, while I was always up till midnight and later, washing dishes while Mother and Father and my brothers cleaned the tavern and prepared for the next day. It was a Saturday night. The tavern revelers had been boisterous. When the dishes were done, I climbed the stairs, weary and angry. A drunken guest had called me an ogress. If I'd been an ogre, I could have persuaded him I was beautiful. I could have eaten him and made him think he was being caressed by the comeliest maiden in Aortha. I may have been almost as ugly as an ogre, but I had none of their persuasive powers. Arita awakened when I came in. She sat up in bed. "Did anything happen? Did we get a new Master at Coolney?" This was her constant, eager question. Master O'Coonley was a legendary guest who stayed with us only once, long ago, when Father's grandfather was a boy. As soon as Master O'Coonley had arrived, every mirror in the feather bed shattered. No guest ever ate as much as he did, and the cook never cooked as well before or after as she had for him. Master O'Coonley had paid in gold yorthies and tipped lavishly, but every coin melted into air the day after his departure. Arita craved the excitement of such an interesting guest. Tonight I had no patience. "Hush, I'm too tired." "Oh." She plopped back down with a thump. I undressed to my shift and got into bed next to her. I kept picturing the guest's flushed, foolish face. "What do you wish?" Arita sang the beginning of a rhyming game. She was a pest. "Shh, Father will come. I'm too exhausted to sing." "I'm not," she sang more softly. "I wish for a moat and a boat and a float." I wish she'd shut up. I was silent. "I wish for a twister, a blister, a wide awake sister." "If you don't hush, I'll smother you." I felt tears coming. "I wish for—" "Can't you just this once?" I squeezed my eyes shut. I wouldn't let that taunt make me cry. "Stop being a pest?" "No. I wish—" "I hate you." She was silent. I felt awful. A tear got out. Now I made Arita unhappy. "I don't hate you." She was silent. A sob got out. She sat up. "I'm sorry." She patted my shoulder. "I should have guessed." I raised myself on one elbow. My tears were flowing now. "It's not your fault." "I despise them." "They think I don't have feelings." I wiped my eyes on our quilt. "Can a dragon judge a stumo?" It was what she always said. It meant that louts had no idea of the finest things. She added, "You have the most beautiful voice." "You do too. Not like yours, and you always smell nice, like fennel seeds." "Fennel?" "Fennel, warm and savory, and your eyes are gorgeous." "Thank you." My eyes were my only acceptable feature. "And I wish I was as tall as you. You look like a statue." I'd have given anything to be as neatly and daintily made as Arita. "Besides," her voice took on an adult tone I disliked, "besides, how one looks isn't important. You're proof of that." I was proof looks were important. Arita could say they weren't only because she was pretty, but I didn't want to quarrel with her twice in 5 minutes. We were quiet. She said, "I love you." I touched her arm. "I know." She settled back down. "Good night." "Good night." But I wanted to make amends. I illused a tiny mouse voice coming from the floor near the bed. "I love you too." I issued a wet, fishy voice coming from the wash basin. "I love you too." She popped up. "What?" I illused a dry, raspy voice coming from the fireplace. "I love you too." "What's making—" I put her hand on my throat so she could feel the vibration. I illused a chirpy voice above our heads. "I love you too." "Tell me what you're doing. Don't just keep doing it." "All right." I told her about illusing. I put one of her hands back on my throat and one on my stomach while I tried to explain how I did it. A quarter hour later, I went to sleep, and she stayed up the rest of the night trying to illuse. She kept trying for the following week with no success. At the end of the week, I showed the technique to the rest of the family. None of them could do it either, although each of them tried to learn. Mother and father urged me to aluse at the next village sing. They were proud of my voice, and they wanted me to stand out, this once, in a way that was to my advantage. But I decided to keep my alusing secret. If I revealed it, the villagers would try to learn too. I'd have to explain how I flung the sound out. I'd have to address them all. Singing to them was easy. Speaking was hard. Worst of all, I'd have to show them how I moved my belly. It was too mortifying to consider.